Ned, Sylvia, welcome. Welcome to the channel.
Pleasure to be here.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to come on the channel, actually. One of the things I set out to do this year is to talk more to people who are building products in the analytics space. And I think you're a really, really good fit in this sort of realm. And so we're going to have plenty of time to get into Enso a little bit more in this video. But maybe I'll give you the floor, maybe just to introduce yourselves, who you are, and then maybe after that, what Enso is.
Of course. So let me start and then I will pass to Ned. So my name is Sylvia. I am a CEO of Enso. My background, because this is leading me to where I am right now, is from the very beginning in data analytics. It was not data analytics per se. It was material science, computational physics, stuff like this. So I was always dealing with the data. But another part to that was helping other people to analyze data. So I was starting as early as the uni with writing Python scripts or Jupyter notebooks to my friends who were analyzing the data and didn't have the tools actually
Right.
to do that correctly, and were blocked by it because there was just a standard set of things that they could do. And that has started my career with actually building the tools for them. And it is not different than what we are doing now here, because it is all about enabling people who don't have the technical stack
Right.
to analyze the data, get the insights, and use it as much as possible and get as much as possible out of it. And with that path, I met at some point Ned, who is building it longer than me, definitely. And we started working together.
Amazing. Over to you, Ned.
I got my start as a hacker programmer really young. I started programming when I was 8 years old, which for my age was exceptionally early. Originally on a DEC PDP-11. So I doubt any of your listeners even have any clue what that kind of computer is, but
I have no clue.
It's an old mini computer. My school had a timeshare access to it. The computer actually was 3 towns over. And we just had terminals. And I just loved programming. It was the only thing I was good at. I wasn't good at school. I was great at math, but other than math, I really didn't do well in school. I was dyslexic and stuff. And but I loved programming, and I at some point said, I'm going to have a career as a programmer and product designer. And I said to myself, I will do anything but database work. And what have I done? Nothing but database work.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Anyway, so yeah, sometime when I had some experience, done a bunch of consulting and some software jobs, I decided I needed to start my own company, and I met a few people, Dean and Libby, who we started Alteryx together back in 1997. And I, of course, did lots of database work, and then had no idea what analytics was, had no idea what data quality cleansing. I'd never done any of that kind of stuff, but we did a lot of consulting for fairly big companies in the marketing space, and they would send us their data to merge with demographics and Experian data and stuff like that. And we had nothing but trouble getting their data merged with these other data sources because, of course, their data quality wasn't good. And so I got into this space out of need, just building tools for my own use and our own use. And built what I think was a great tool for one user at a time. But really wanted to think about it over again. What would I do differently if I was designing a product that I was actually designing rather than building just out of necessity? And so started thinking about working as teams and working together rather than the individualistic, just get a job done that I was doing before. But yeah, that's sort of how I came into this space. It was not on purpose, but here I am.
It's actually a common thread with a lot of people I talk to in data. It's data almost feels to be the place that catches us when the thing we were trying to do doesn't work out, or we start doing what we're doing in our respective fields and actually realize people really value what we do in the data space, and so we end up here. And Ned, you touched on something interesting. You mentioned this concept of a timeshare for a computer, and I think to a lot of people listening, they won't even know that, like, yes, you used to have to, I guess timeshare in this instance is you're booking time on a machine to do what you need to do because it was such a scarce resource at the time, right? I think that's sort of the concept. Yeah, exactly. It's it's wild to most people. We all have personal computers, and yeah, we've come a long way. And so, if I come back maybe and just dig into this sort of focus around Enso, how did the Enso team come together? If we maybe just dig into that, you Sylvia, you met Ned, but I'm assuming it's more than just the two of you, right? So yeah, how did Enso form?
We have started earlier. I met Ned at some point couple of years ago. I was chatting with the users who were using actually tools from that space, including Alteryx. And one of the users, Rafael Albert from ASDA, he was like, you should really talk to Ned Harding. He is a good guy who's doing really great job, and like he is super clever. That would be a good fit for the conversation. So he introduced us, and we had a couple of conversations at that point. One of the people we were chatting who was a heavy user of tools like this was also James Dunkerley.
Yes.
So James became our CTO. We have a team of really amazing developers from all over the world. It is not only US, it is also Europe. So we got the best talent all over the place. And we got also later in the career Adam Riley, who you may know as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Who joined us on the libraries. So we are building something really special, and we managed to get a really, really amazing team. And it's a pleasure to work with Ned and guys. And they are really, really knowing the space and knowing the tools and understanding the users, which is super important.
Yeah, like product intuition comes from this sort of lived experience of what people are doing with the tools, like the pains they're still trying to solve, because even the good tools we have today don't solve every problem. And I think as technology moves on, we get new opportunities to try and solve those problems. And I think it's very clear that that team you've assembled, I know they've experienced a lot of the challenges of the products evolved, because I've read many of their blogs. I've experienced some of their work as well. Adam Riley with Crew Macros, right? Like there's so much there that it is amazing. So for you to have that in your team, I think is an incredible testament. And anyone who's watching this who knows those names will know that they know what they're talking about. So it's a fantastic team.
Well, and it was a fantastic team before I came on board. Sylvia had a team of developers, mostly in Poland, but elsewhere as well, who had developed a really cool core of an engine, but they were looking for how to turn that into a product. So a lot of the design philosophy from Enso came from a very different spot, because it came out of this core that was a little bit more programming focused, and then morphed into a product from there. And it's really become something very interesting and unique and different, and approaching the space in a different way than I think most any other product. So it's kind of cool just doing something different. And then I'll just say, in terms of James and Adam and the rest of the team, they're just some of the smartest people around, and it's so fun working with them. And that's what I love doing, is just being around smart people.
Amazing. So I guess maybe it's a good opportunity to ask you both, like, if you could describe Enso to my audience is, predominantly Tableau, but maybe let's broaden that out to say data analysts embedded within the business, embedded within analytics teams. How would you describe Enso to them?
Did I take it, Sylvia?
Sure.
Well, I'll start from Tableau because Tableau is your users. Tableau is a really great way to present data and to help people make decisions with their data, give reports to executives who can know what salesperson they need to focus on this month because they were really good or really bad or whatever it is. The problem with Tableau is it only works well if your data is good. And what happens so often is people come into their Tableau journey with data that has been hand entered and is of questionable quality. And Tableau does provide some tools for helping you with that. But if you have more than a couple data sources and more than a couple of issues with your data, it tends to be very clunky to get your data correct, clean. So a tool like Enso has a full suite of all of the data quality and data prep tools. We can take data from most any data source, write it to most any data source, get it all clean, do some visualization. It's not like we don't do visualization, but we're not trying to be Tableau. We're trying to get your data to where it's ready to present to an executive, not do the presentation itself.
Yeah. I think, the visual component is actually quite useful when you're doing data prep because it can be a really good quick way to, I guess, get a 10,000-foot view, as AWS calls it, right? Into sort of what challenges you're trying to solve. And sometimes it can alert you to patterns that aren't so easily recognizable when you're just looking at, tables and some of that as well. So I totally connect with that.
And I mean, some classic data visualizations like a scatter plot can be so important because all of your data clusters in one quadrant, and then you have 10% of your records or 2% of your records out in a completely different quadrant, and it does help you narrow in on those records. And in Enso, you can select those records straight off the visualization and then continue your tabular-based discovery on what's going on there. And that's really helpful because those records might be like your best performers. They might be your worst performers, or they might just be bad data. And so seeing it on a chart is great, but then you have to dive back in and know why that data is the way it is. And that's where hopefully Enso can help in a very unique way.
Sylvia, I think you were going to add something.
Yes, for me, what is super important is that the people who need to have this business insights can go grab a tool and work with it by themselves, or they can say to their data person who is usually preparing the first parts of the job to give them initial workflow and then dig into that themselves and adjust. Because in many cases, they are trying to explain for the third party what they want to achieve. It is really hard sometimes to explain if you don't see the data and you cannot explore and you cannot play with that. So this is the tool that is enabling to work between also levels, between the business and the stakeholders and the data people. So everyone can achieve together the goal, which is super, super important in my view.
Yeah, it's a pretty lofty goal, it's a pretty lofty challenge. And I think before we maybe go on to a screen share and talk a bit more about the products, I think if I step back a little bit, there's this there's a lot of talk in the current ecosystem around semantic modeling and let's say semantics more generally as a concept. And what I wonder is where data prep comes into that. And I've always felt the view that when I talk to data engineers, they view data prep as somewhat different, I think, to what they do, which sometimes can be modeling, it can sometimes be warehousing, can sometimes be, maybe pipelines. How would you sort of articulate the difference between, what you're doing with Enso, the data prep sort of things, versus what a data engineer does when they're, talking about semantics as a concept?
What I would say, data engineers don't want to go to the visual tools. They want to write their scripts and go forward with that, and they are very comfy with their Python, DBT, whatever they have under their belt. So that's one side. And with Enso, you can achieve very similar goals, doing it visually and then unifying and automating that over the runs and over the workflows. So from my perspective, it's not the difference what you're doing, it is a different approach, because the philosophy is very, very, very different for data engineer than for the analyst.
Yeah, exactly. And so maybe if I extend that thinking, your approach is maybe closer towards the business analyst versus an approach which is more towards, I guess, the engineer, right? From a data perspective.
In general, if you've got engineering involved, you have a very different workflow. It tends to be somebody who understands the data, trying to write a spec, throw it over a fence. Some amount of time later, they get something back. It may or may not be right. If that's what the company does, it's worthwhile, obviously, to have those kinds of engineers involved. But the time from seeing the data to discovering something you can make a decision on, the timeline gets very extended because of this communication gap. So our goal is to not involve a data engineer, is to have the person who understands the data do their own work. And rather than communicating back and forth and taking months to get an answer that may or may not be right, they can do the same thing in hours on their own machine. So it's just a different way of thinking of it, but the why is the most important thing, and engineers tend to not understand the why. I mean, I can't speak for all of them because I'm probably an engineer, and hopefully I understand the why, but it's Enso is for people who understand the why of the data. They understand what the goals are.
Right.
And it allows them to work together and share their results with the team very seamlessly, very quickly.
Amazing. Right. So maybe this is a good opportunity to sort of dive into the product, if that makes sense.
Awesome. So as you can see, we will start with data prep and blend. So where everything begins, it is, as you can see, very minimalistic. It is not having exposed menu with all the tools, but data prep and blend. So we need to start with bringing data into the product. So we will start with the input. As you can see, we are getting something that we are calling component browser. So you can search through the components. We have suggested ones, but also other possibilities. Feel free to ask any questions during that.
Yeah.
So I will choose the data read, and I will bring a file that I have on my hard drive, actually. I don't know that you don't see the file browser, but I promise it is what I opened.
Fine. Yeah.
So you can see the first component that is bringing the Excel file.
Yeah.
The Excel file has two worksheets, the invoices data and CRM data. I can open any worksheet by double clicking on that and explore what is in that data set, actually. So I will do the full screen of the visualization. So we can see
Nice.
that we have some EIN numbers, invoice amounts, company name, invoice date in the data set. Now I will exit full screen, open the second data set and see what is in the CRM data. We have again the EIN number and the account owner. And what I want to do today is to get the summary by the salesperson that we have in the second data sheet by year and by performance. But as we can see, the EIN is rather nasty. So we have some random symbols here and make this visualization bigger. So we need to clean that, and also we didn't parse correctly the invoice date, so we need to fix that as well. So how to start with that? I will click the plus button here, and as you can see, I'm getting again the browser, but it is different than the first one. So it is adjusted to the data that you have brought to the product. You can either go and click through the tools, or you can do it differently. I can just search. What I need to do is I need to clean the text with the EIN. So I can type clean, get the text cleanse tool, and now I can set up the configuration. So I need to choose the column I need to clean. So it's my EIN column. And what I want to remove, I can clean multiple columns or a single one. Also, I can do multiple operations in that. When I am selecting, it is the order that is preserved while doing that. Here, I need just to remove the symbols. And I can see the output of the data. So the data is clean. I will need to do the same operation on the second data set. So what I can do is I will just copy and paste, move it over here, and then reconnect the component. So it is just working the same way. It's exactly the same. Now what I will do is I will clean also the date. So we had a very weird format here. So let me parse it. The column is the invoice date. I need to reformat it as a date. I will do my custom format. So it will be date space comma year. And now the date is correctly parsed. I need to get out of this the year because I want to have the summary by the year.
Yeah.
So let's add another component. The component we need is set. It is something like formula in Alteryx.
Yeah.
So I will use the expression. And what I want to get is the year. I'm getting suggestions. So I need to give the name right now, which was invoice date, and close the bracket. And I want that to be a year column.
Nice. So you're like creating a new column, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
At the end of the data set. I know, because I know this data set, that I have duplicates, but I can check that out. So let's check for duplicates. And it is giving me a warning.
Yes.
It is a warning that I am comparing rows that have cells that have floating point numbers, and it might not be the greatest idea to compare floating point numbers, but we are fine here. I can get the duplicates over a single column or all of the columns. If I'm not selecting anything, it is all of the columns.
Yeah.
So right now I can see that I have 40 duplicates. I need to get rid of them. So I will remove this component, but add a distinct component that will handle that for me.
I see.
And it's the same warning. I can get rid of it so it will not propagate through the workflow by ignoring it.
Oh,
That would be me.
I feel like I need to add, just for people who aren't programmers, why that warning exists. Floating point numbers, even if they look the same based on how they were computed, can be different internal representations. So if you have the number 3 that you typed, and then you have a expression of 5 times 0.6, which should be the same number, it's possible the internal representation will be very slightly different and they will not compare identically. So the reason why Sylvia knows that she can get rid of the warning here is because all of those numbers have the same source. None of them are computed. Right. But if some of them were read and some of them were computed, they could be different in the 16th decimal place and it wouldn't be found by distinct. So you'd have to do a round or something like that first.
Right. Right.
I know I'm getting technical, but I feel like it's
we
worth
love the
adding.
detail. Yeah, we love the detail. It's incredible. Yeah. Thank you.
I will join both of the data sets together.
Yep.
So let's go to join. And now it is asking me to provide the second table. So I will connect them together.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
And when choosing the join kind, in Enso, we have always one output. So if you want to have left outer join or full join, you need to choose the proper join from the menu. It is not about getting 2 outputs and merging them together.
Yeah.
On default, it will try to join on the first column, which would work here. But what I would do, and it's a good practice, is to say on what you are joining. And it's because later with time, if you're going through their workflow and looking at that after a month, you know exactly what you have done, and it is very visible step by step what was happening. So we have joined both of the data sets together. So now we need to cross tab.
Okay.
Make it.
It's great, like the presentation view. Yeah.
So let's go with the cross tab, not cross join, but cross tab. We will need to group by account owner, which is here. Then we can group over multiple columns, of course. Then we need to get the year and have sum over invoice amount.
Right.
And as you can see, we have many leading spaces in here. And we now were calculating sums over the incomes and invoices. So what I would do would be formatting actually those columns.
Yeah.
And again, we can choose one by one, but what we can do also is to choose by type.
Oh.
What I want to get is all of the columns that are floating, that have floats inside. Then it would be something like this. We can see, okay, it's working, but I know we have their invoices and values are dollars. So let's put a dollar sign in front and accept. As you can see, it is immediate change. Don't have to run anything. It is always reflecting immediately. What was the most important for me was who is the best salesperson this year, let's say. So I can sort it in the visualization, but it is not permanent. If I want to get that as next component, I can add it from the visualization and have it for the future, save it, send it over the email. Okay, you have done it for the 1 month, and now you need to do it over the second one. So let's change the file from June to July. And as you can see, our person is right now Patricia. It was Amy before. So you're getting immediate reward as you're changing the.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What we have on the right side is the documentation of the workflow. So the documentation of the workflow can be written by the user. It is stored together with the workflow. You can write usually what is the goal of the workflow, what are the inputs, what are the outputs, whatever you need to save. It is together. You can also comment on each component if you want to. Like I can add here a comment that this component is sorting in a
nice
2024. It would be saved as well for the future.
Amazing. I have to say, it's really clean. I like the thought process is very clear. I like that the little windows you get into, like, preview what you're doing. That is not sort of new to I guess this kind of tool. But I think what is nice is that, right at the top of each of these little perspectives, you've got the function or the calculation or the instruction very clearly set out. Sometimes that's actually the hardest thing to get to when you're sort of working in these things. It's somewhat removed from the process. And then the ability to, I guess, the flexibility in how you work is quite nice here. What I've seen in some of the filter and the tool drop downs and the contextual awareness of the tool means that I think it's a much easier approachable tool, because you're only going to see what's actually useful, in context of what you're actually about to do. So yeah, whenever you've hit that sort of plus icon, I've been sort of looking at, like, hey, what is it suggesting after this step? And it's actually quite very logical each time. And yeah, as you're showing here, just even the ability to compress bits of the analysis you're not interested in right now is very, very nice as well.
So
clean.
I agree. I think it's very clean. The other thing I love is there's no information hiding behind icons. All the information is there, so it makes it much more straightforward to do the equivalent of a code review. If I produce this data and I need to show you how I produce the data, it's very clean for you and I to read through all the steps. But if we dive under the covers a little bit and show the code view, Sylvia, this is something that is very unique about Enso. Is Sylvia actually was writing a program.
Oh, wow.
It's all visual. It's all very clean and simple, and you don't need to be a programmer. But at the end, we get a functional, and I mean functional as opposed to functional versus procedural, programming representation of everything that was up above. And what's really cool about that is you could make changes here in the code if that's how you think, or we can easily do version control. And when you do version control, rather than seeing differences in XML or JSON or some abstract representation of what's going on, you can see the actual code changes that were done. So when you go to collaborate, when you and I are working on solving one problem together, it's really easy for us to see, oh, Ned added this, oh, Tim added that. Because of that code representation.
It's awesome that you're mentioning that. So here is the data catalog view, because we were in the workflow, but there is a part that is a data catalog. That you have here a space to work with your teammates. So I can go to some workflow that we have in that space. So like that. And if I go to the random workflow, I can see the versions that were
Oh,
saved,
yeah.
who
Yeah.
was working on them all the time. Let's go somewhere further. So we had Steve who was making changes. And if I go there, I can compare it with our latest version of that workflow and see what
Oh,
exactly
wow.
what Ned was talking about, that we
Like a
have
diff checker.
quite a new version, the old version on the left, what has changed during the time, who changed it.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to check what was happening. Also, what I can do is I can duplicate the old workflow, or I can restore the previous version. So if someone broke the workflow while you were away because they thought that you're doing a great thing, you can
Yeah.
always restore, go back, and also understand what has changed.
That's really flexible, and I guess this adds to the narrative around being able to tag the metadata from a tool perspective, but then also just observability, being able to see this sort of fidelity as people are collaborating. And I guess from a maybe if we lean into the collaboration perspective, is the idea that there's sort of any concept around CI/CD. So the idea that, when someone's working on a flow, they have to finish working on it before someone else can, or is it possible for two people to work side by side? How does that sort of, look over your shoulder sort of collaboration work as it is through the tool?
Currently, it is one person working on a
Right.
workflow at a time.
Yeah.
The technology under the covers that it's developed with, in theory, is allowing for a Google Docs style multiple people.
Yes.
We haven't focused on that right now because that's just not the most important thing today. So at some point in the future, we would hope to have that. As far as CI/CD, we again, where we are and where we're going, we don't have that built in yet, but it is the building blocks are all there. So one of the aspects Sylvia showed reading from an Excel file, all the data can be stored in the cloud, but the other thing that can be stored in the cloud is what we call a data link.
Right.
And the data link is particularly cool in that I only need to know where is the latest customer file. I don't need to know that it's in Oracle or in SQL Server or Salesforce, or I don't care where the data is. I read from this data link.
Right.
The future of the data link is that it's going to have multiple destinations. So I can have a debug data link and a release data link, and I can have the debug data link coming from a CSV file where I have a sample just loaded into the cloud, and then the release data link going to the main customer file in a remote database somewhere. But you don't want to hit that database while you're developing your workflow. So having that lifespan functionality is definitely coming. When hard to say at this point. You can do it manually, of course, now because you can have two separate data links. But we will have a more automated system for that. But it's such a great way for collaboration. So a team can have a folder in the cloud service of data links. We don't have to host all your data. That data doesn't even need to be in the cloud. It can still be behind your firewall if you're reading the data locally. If you're running it in what we call a hybrid environment, where you're running the workflows locally, you'd be reading the data link on the cloud. The data link would have a connection to, say, a SQL server. That SQL server is behind your firewall. So
Right.
in order to utilize the cloud collaboration, you don't have to move all your data into the cloud if your company's not ready to do that.
Amazing. It's a good way to virtualize the connection, almost give it like a proxy, but then have that become an asset in itself. It's a nice concept because, yeah, even just collaboration, actually, that's sometimes the biggest hindrance, just being able to share connections. And if you can sort of abstract that detail in this way, then that's a really good solution around that problem.
And then not only are you sharing the connection, but you're sharing the metadata. So that same documentation that Sylvia was showing on the workflow, you have that same documentation panel on the data link. And so you can explain exactly what's going on in this data source in a place where the whole team can get to it.
Yeah.
With
Perfect.
add here as the next level, you are creating a data link for your team, but each of the team members has their own secrets. And you can define the secret for each person in their personal cloud space. So this is my
A
personal
secret is generally a username and password or an OAuth connection, or it's security credentials. It doesn't have to be security credentials. It can be any secret, but that's generally what it is.
Exactly. So you're creating for each user the new secret, and that is stored in their personal space, and then
Yeah.
the data link in the common space is using the secret from your personal space. So every time you are running the workflow, it is using your credentials.
I see.
So your IT is happy because they know what's happening, and you are not sharing that access with anyone
Correct.
else.
Yeah.
But for your team, it is very convenient because they don't have to change that every time.
Connection.
Anyone,
Yeah.
it's just
It also makes the scenario easier when someone leaves a team, right? Because it's just a matter of handling that detail rather than going, oh god, now we have to go and find everything that this person put their username and password into and and sort that out.
Well, that, and it allows you to share data in two different ways. You can use our sharing mechanism where you can have the credentials embedded with the data link, and it's shared within the Enso cloud system, and then you can delete that user and they lose access to it. And we do auditing and logging and all of that. But some IT departments might not be comfortable with the sharing being through the Enso auditing. They want to have the auditing the way they've always done it. So the IT department can require that each user has their own individual access, so they can still use the auditing from the data source provider as opposed to having to go to Enso's auditing. So it's all about flexibility in not only how the user works, but how IT requires the user to work.
Yeah.
Because data leaks are such a huge thing these days. It's super important for us to help IT prevent that.
Yeah, it's a really well thought through concept, and I think maybe this comes from the benefit of you don't have the legacy of like a gazillion connections that you need to support. So you've had maybe the benefit of being able to sort of think this problem through with a fresh start and actually build it for today's world, right? It's kind of a fortunate position to be in.
And the other thing that we're building for today's world is a hybrid, because there's desktop products out there and there's cloud products out there, and neither of them work in various situations. I mean, some companies like healthcare in particular just are not willing to put their data in somebody else's cloud platform. They might have their own cloud platform and that's their business and their IT and whatnot, but they're because of HIPAA rules and whatever else, they're just not willing to move the data into somebody else's cloud platform. So when Sylvia has been running here, she's actually been running that workflow locally on her laptop at the same time as running that catalog remotely in the cloud.
I see.
And then she could also schedule this workflow to run in the cloud every hour, or every day, or whatnot. If her IT allowed her to have her data in the cloud.
Right.
So it's really
Yeah.
the cloud versus desktop is up to the user, and it's very transparent. You almost don't realize when you're running in the cloud versus when you're running in the desktop. Except,
Yeah.
I mean, you do, but it's seamless.
Yeah. I'm seeing the schedule capability is also quite flexible. That's it. Yeah, people have very regular patterns in their business, and so being able to break free of having to set up multiple schedules to cover all bases is kind of nice. It's super nice. So maybe in terms of that question, let me just dig into that a little bit more. So if I understand this correctly, the flow that we built at the beginning, that's running locally on the laptop. Then you've got this data catalog component, which I understand to be a cloud representation of the assets available to the team and I guess to the business. And so what is that interface between sort of local development and I guess moving the process to like a more resilient, or maybe not more resilient, but more sort of long-lived architecture in the cloud where it can run on a schedule? What does that interface look like? Is there sort of a handoff? Do you publish? Like, what's that sort of transition like?
If I'm creating a project in the cloud here in my account space, it is automatically available for everyone.
Right.
But what I can do is I can go to my local and
Local. Yeah. Right.
or start from scratch on my local computer with the workflow that is just on my local hard drive. And then I can tell that I want to export that to cloud.
Right.
Or
I see.
I can drag and drop.
Let's see. Might be because of screen sharing. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, sometimes when we screen share, the screen share takes over the drag and drop. I've had that.
And either put that in one of the folders or to the common space and upload that. I can see that it is uploading. So I uploaded the file and it is right now available to everyone.
And on the cloud, we have a team space and a private space. So if you want to work in the cloud but keep your data private to you, that's still an option. We don't have the enterprise version yet. We're just not there. So we only have one team right now. And in the future, we'll have any number of teams that the sharing will be automatic within a team, but then to share between teams will be a whole different thing.
Yes. Yeah. That makes sense because I think people set up that architecture for good reasons, right? So you have to kind of design for those, I guess, edge cases where you put something between two teams and now you've potentially opened up a can of worms in terms of how those two teams work, the organization might not realize. So that's definitely a much harder problem to solve for. So
yeah. And we have all the building blocks, just where we are as a company. We are at this point dealing with one team at a time, and it will quickly migrate to more. But what's interesting about what Sylvia just moved into the cloud, if she were to open that from the cloud, you don't need to if you don't want, but it would still read the local desktop file. So if she shared it with you and you didn't have that file, you would get a file not found error. So the workflow and the data are separate things,
separate assets. Okay.
She can move the workflow to the cloud, she can move the data to the cloud, or she can move both to the cloud, depending on what the goals are. And we're really embracing the hybrid if you want it local, you can have it local. If you want it cloud, you can have it cloud. If you want it half and half, you can have it half and half. I think it's very unique in that sense.
That's quite I think that's quite unique, because I think people always assume that if you're going to publish this asset, you of course you take the data with it, but it's actually, from a separation of concerns perspective, it's actually quite nice to not assume that, because it then means that the activity of sharing the data with the asset is more deliberate, and therefore you're less likely to make mistakes around sharing or security. You actually have to make more of a conscious sort of approach to it, which is nice. I like it.
Yeah.
If by some reason you cannot or you don't want to schedule things on our clouds because security, there is always an option to schedule that on your own computer using your, I don't know, Windows Task Manager,
Right.
or any other tool or script. And we are not forbidding that. You can do it freely, and it's always how we can help the users to achieve the goals, more than how to make your life more complicated.
I love it. Yeah, no, that's some teams you have very specific constraints around that. I think if you work in finance, for example, sometimes you have requirements around running data on very specific hardware located in a very specific place, and companies use those kinds of approaches to get around those challenges. So yeah, I appreciate the flexibility, to be honest, because I think sometimes that's where the SaaS companies tend to get you. Like you're using their products and they're like, oh, okay, you want something convenient? Wow, let me tell you about that. And then you start to. This is where maybe the sentiment against SaaS companies has come from long term, right? Because it's almost a cultural thing in those companies. So yeah, I love it. In terms of then the product, I know we've spoken before today's video, and we talked a little bit about a community version, right? So what does that look like, and how can we get people to start playing with this? Because obviously my audience very interested in exploring how the product works. I'd love to get them using it. I want to make videos on it, and so to me, I'm like, right, let's go look at the community version and see what we can build so we can get more familiar with the tool.
You are downloading exactly the same product, and
amazing.
Data prep and blend perspective, nothing is changing. So you are getting access to the data prep and blend. The difference that is there is that for the community version, you're not getting the cloud capabilities, so data link, thread storing, sharing. Team capabilities are licensed. So this is one part. But when you are actually signing in for the community, you are getting 30 days trial. The cloud product, it is a solo license, but it's not a problem. With the community version, you can use it freely, even if you have a business with revenue up to $1 million, I believe. So for the personal use or small businesses, if you don't the team
or non-profits, right? Like you have much, they typically wouldn't have a not-for-profit if they have that kind of revenue is probably doing something very, very good. So it's an incredible opportunity, and I think it's fantastic. I support it. I say thank you for doing that, because if I'm brutally honest, you see, data analysts, there's often this demand to be able to be experienced at tools, but I always say that sometimes licensing doesn't enable that, right? Because you're basically asking people to take quite a big investment in a tool and get deep expertise in the tool without prior having access to it. So you can almost exclusively only do it through a job. And in those contexts, sometimes the data you get to work with at work is not very interesting. So you do need like a community version to allow people to get their football data, their sports data, or maybe their own data, work with something they really understand and know intuitively really, really well. And that gets the engagement and excitement throughout the product to really test it. Oh, I saw in a previous sort of screen you were looking at web scraping, right, as an idea. And so I'm like, yeah, that would be a great little project if I'm trying to go and, maybe scrape game data from like a game that I play a lot, just to get some insights. And that becomes way more fun and social than, sometimes what we're asked to do at work.
And probably more than we want to dive into today, but Enso is particularly good at web scraping and JSON handling.
Right. Yeah.
That we'll save that one for another day. But backing up, I just wanted to say your point about nonprofits is really important, and that's actually one of the major reasons I'm involved with Enso. I basically
Right.
retired after the Alteryx IPO. But I've been working with a bunch of nonprofits, and they have the same data problems that everybody else has, and they can't afford decent tools. And
Yeah.
they have sometimes more data because of all the donor data and whatnot, and they don't have
Yeah.
tools. So that was one of my goals with it. And so was to make sure that it is available for nonprofits, especially small
Yeah.
nonprofits that can't afford uh, expensive tools.
Yeah.
From the perspective of the person who is running the business, if I'm looking at Tableau, the community has built a lot of credit, a lot of
Yeah.
business as well for
Yeah.
Tableau.
Goodwill. Yeah. Yeah.
If you have users who love the product
Yeah.
will evolve, will grow, and it will be all fine.
Yeah.
But to get those users, it is important to be first honest with them. Second, give them the ability to use the product. And that's why we don't want to get rid of that free access, but we
Yeah.
want to enable more people to use it because
Yeah.
we believe that what we are creating is really special and can help them. So
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it. It's a very rare thing. And yeah, I think it's super important. Excellent. Well, I think we've come to a natural conclusion. One of the things I wanted to do just to close out is maybe just get your perspectives on what you see as the big challenges, I guess, maybe for Enso or maybe for analytics in general. And then what, if you have any questions for me, also happy to answer those. And then obviously we talked a little bit about this before, but what I'm planning to do is over the course of the next month, I'll be using Enso a bit more on the channel. As people are watching this, it should be March-ish. We're recording this in February, so yeah, look out for more content on that. But maybe back to you. Yeah, what are the big challenges from an analytics or an Enso perspective that you see sort of coming up in the next year or two?
It's just a matter of getting the product out to people. I
Right.
mean, Enso has been a lot of work to get to this point, and it's in a really great state. And
Yeah.
so the challenge for Enso is just introducing it to the world. The challenge for people is there's just such a variety of tools out there, and uh, knowing what tool is the right tool for the right
Right.
company workflow is very hard these days.
Yeah.
So we're really thankful to you, Tim, for being able to share what we do with you and your audience, and hopefully that will solve some problems for both us and your audience, making that
Yeah.
introduction.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many times I see people using the wrong tool for the job. And that's not to say
Yeah.
that Enso is always the right tool for the job. It might be the wrong tool for a lot of jobs, but
Yeah.
just getting people to the right solutions is a challenge. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. Good. All right. I think yeah. Do you have any questions for me? Maybe you came with a burning question. You don't need to ask one if you don't want to, but I always offer the opportunity.
Well, you go by Tableau, Tim. Obviously, you're branching out and looking at other aspects.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you see as the your biggest goals for the next year or two in terms of where you are going?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually something I've spent probably longer than the last year thinking about, just because of what's been happening in the space. I've written about this a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but if I step back, I think one of the challenges with analytics in general is that I think the way we use the tools, the workflows that underpin the tools that we choose, they're being challenged. I don't think they're changing. I think they're just being challenged. And so you've got new ways of thinking about the same workflows, new ways of conceptualizing the same workflows that we've had in analytics for ages. Like semantics is a big thing at the moment, but it's existed for a long time. It's just rearing its head in a different context. And I think the challenge for me is, at least for the last 5 years, I've ridden this wave of teaching people about data through the lens of one tool. And I think what that's led to is I've almost co-opted and adopted a philosophy around data that is very strongly aligned with a product's own philosophy, if that makes sense. So the way I think about my workflows, the way I think about the way I do things, naturally just aligns itself with like the Tableau ecosystem, because that's what I've been spending a lot of time covering. But as these challenges are coming in, I actually naturally feel that sort of perspective being challenged. And so one of the things I've set out to do is to, just explore a bigger range of tools. And at least to my audience, I'll always be Tableau Tim, because that's who they know me as. But I think I've also maybe gained their trust over those 5 years that I know enough about the field and the topics to be able to guide them through what change might look like for someone who happens to have had the same journey as I have, someone who's spent a long time having a philosophy that's aligned with the BI tool, whether it's Tableau, whether it's Power BI, whatever it is, right? And then how do we teach those people not to fall into those same traps? So I'm really exploring new tools. I'm really exploring new ways of working. And I started a newsletter for the very fact that I wanted to challenge the way that I think in the form of writing. Whereas with video, it's, you tune in to listen to my perspective. So it doesn't really challenge me. I just get to say what I want. Whereas with writing, people can critique it in a different way. So those, I think, are the two big things: challenging my workflow and then bringing my audience with me, and then challenging myself to learn, the industry almost all over again, because I think I've been aligned to philosophy for a long time.
Oh, I can't wait to follow your journey. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a big challenge as well. The social media platforms don't help with the way they sort of handle audiences and stuff. You don't really own the audience per se when you're working on one of these platforms like YouTube or LinkedIn. You're borrowing the audience just for a moment, and if you do the bidding of the platform, they'll push your message. But if you don't, they don't show your content to anyone. So yeah, there is that
Very
too.
true.
It's a big challenge.
Amazing. But there is a huge
Sorry.
opportunity also to get to all of those people who are saying, okay, I have learned SQL, I have learned basic Python, I have learned so many tools, and how do I get to be a data analyst? Because I still don't know. So
Yeah.
you can learn from you because you have the perspective as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, there's maybe a bit of conversions happening in the industry. I don't think it's because, AI is really not yet truly challenging, I think, our roles, but I think it is challenging the way we approach work, the way we think about work, because there is a sort of openness to explore new ways of thinking again, even if we end up realizing that what we did before was perfectly fine. We just need better tools or, better ways of thinking. So yeah, there is a huge opportunity in the data niche. And I think I'm always of the view that even if AI becomes a big thing in the industry, it's only going to increase the amount of opportunity to work with data, not decrease it. And so we're still going to need tools. We're still going to need people. And I think it's a mistake to assume that, AI will replace the roles that we've played in the businesses. It might replace some of the workflows we execute, but I don't think it will replace what we do in the business and how we understand data. So anyway, I'll fly that flag as long as I can.
100% agree with you.
And until I'm wrong, then we can have another discussion. Amazing. Okay. Yeah, we'll call it there. Thank you both of you for coming on the channel. I really appreciate this. I've followed Enso for quite a bit of time. I've used it in a work context and also just in a social context. So yeah, over the coming weeks, we're going to be using it more on the channel, and yeah, hopefully everyone watching starts to play around with it. And yeah, I know you've got product updates as well, so I'll be keeping an eye on those and excited to see what you build.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for it, and see you on maybe our community platform.
Yes. All right. Perfect. Take care.